Today on Locked On Red Wings, should Detroit look for a long-term option in net this offseason?
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. I'm formerly a broadcast producer for 97.1 The Ticket, where Scotty's the host over at Locked On Tigers, as well as a freelance journalist for the Detroit News. And on today's episode, guys, we're going to take a look ahead at July 1st and take a peek at that UFA goaltender market, as while Detroit does still have two goalies under contract for one more year, being Lyon and Ville Husso, we wanted to look and see if anyone makes sense for them to bring in as the third goalie for this season, as both of their contracts are up at the end of this next season. But before we get to that, I got to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon today to get started. Scotty, I guess the leading question here that I'm going to ask you, happy Monday, by the way, before we get into like specific goalies that could fit these individual needs, is when you're looking at the Red Wings goaltender situation, where this last season they carried three, that seems to be a growing trend across the league. Do you personally feel it's in the Red Wings' best interest, with two goalies that are going to have contracts that are expiring at the end of next offseason or the end of next season, to bring in a goalie for a long-term need, or just another goalie to help bridge that gap to either Kosa or Augustine, hoping that they pan out?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess for starters, if you're bridging to Augustine, you probably are just getting a long-term goalie anyway. I don't want people to think that Augustine's going to be ready in like the next year or two. I don't see that as super feasible. But as far as the bridge to Kosa goes, I am never a huge fan of putting like all of your cookies in one jar, right? Like, I don't think it's a very good model. And this is just my like subjective opinion. I'm not saying this is right or wrong. If Kosa ends up being, the the greatest goalie to ever live, then like, okay, like fine, that's obviously different. But like, I just have a really hard time looking at prospects and going, you know what, we are just going to cater everything, and every decision we make is going to be based upon that player turning out, because that doesn't happen. That's not a guarantee. No matter how good of a prospect it is, it's never a guarantee that they are going to be what, everyone's excited about the potential of them being on draft night. So like, for me, in a perfect world, I think you get a long-term option. You get somebody who's going to be here for a long time, but you also only have to choose from what is available. And I think as we talk this out and as we talk about who is available, it doesn't matter if everybody wants a long-term goalie. All 32 fan bases in the NHL want a guy who's going to be their goalie for the next 5 to 7 years, and is going to be, a 50 to 60 game starter in every single season. Yeah, that is probably a pretty darn good goaltender. But in the free agent specifically, and we could talk about trades maybe at a later date, because there are, I think, some interesting goalie candidates on the trade market as well to probably cover. But I think in the free agent market specifically, there might not be a guy that you're comfortable just going, you know what, we're going to give you 4 to 6 years and you're going to be the goalie going forward. I'm not sure that exists this summer. And for as much as we've talked about the free agent market as a whole, I'm not sure that that's and again, we'll talk about it. We'll talk it out. And we have plenty of different angles here to discuss. But I think, that's kind of a market to market question. And so, yes, I would love that, but I'm not sure that that's available this year either.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the free agent pool, there's not really a lot of goalies you can make a run at to fill that long term, like talking 6, 7, 8. And, I tend to err on the side of caution when it comes to free agent goalies as is, because if it comes to if a stud goalie like a Sergei Bobrovsky, actually a perfect example, hits the free agent market, you're not getting him unless you hand him the bag. And that's upwards of $10 million, like the Panthers are paying him. Now, a few years down the road, now it's paying off. He looks like the Vezina caliber goalie they thought he was when they signed him. But for the first few years, that contract looked like an albatross, because goalies are just so weird. Yeah. Let's take a look. And I guess to answer my own question, right? I asked you, would you prefer long-term or short-term? Personally, in my own preference, I think the Red Wings are best off going for another bridge goalie, just because you already have such good goaltender prospects in the pipeline. And I look at who's available, and I don't see anyone pop off the screen that I'm comfortable going, that's our goalie for the next 5-6 years. It's so tough with goalies. And you're seeing this goaltending by committee rise a ton across the NHL. The age of pure number one goaltenders is falling to the wayside already.
The guys 70-game starters are not around anymore.
It's a lot of 40 and 50-game starters. You're looking for a 1A, 1B, and you're looking at goalies that are just constantly, your Hellebucks, your Vasilevskis, your Saros. Those guys are, I don't want to call them dying breed, because some of those guys are still very much in their prime, but they're rarer now. But my point being, right, like they're just rarer to come by now. So when you're looking at the free agent market, and I sorted it on Cap Friendly by obviously expiry status, unrestricted free agent, minimum games played 10, because I'm looking for somebody who can carry a decent amount of workload. And all of a sudden, your list is 15 goaltenders deep. Like, there's not a ton of goalies that are hitting the free agent market that had played 10-plus games, and there's even fewer when you start talking about goalies that I want. Scotty, I know you come into this episode with a few guys that you want to talk about. First and foremost, like, who's the first goalie that pops off this list to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know if I have like a slam dunk, like this is the guy that I'm going to carry the torch for, rather. But I do think that there's a few really interesting options. I think Kahkonen is an interesting conversation, just because I feel like we talked about him before, maybe a few seasons ago. But yeah, mid-season switches teams and has just night and day difference in numbers. Now, obviously, a lot smaller sample size of, the better hockey that he played this year, but also much worse team that he was on in the first half. So I think that guys like that, right? Like, no one thought that Alex Lyon in a million years was going to do what he did for the Detroit Red Wings this season. And that's a guy that was obviously a, late 20s, I don't want to say career AHLer, but like majority of his career, not a ton of NHL experience, and then got an opportunity and got really hot and earned himself an opportunity here and flourished in it. And I'm not trying to compare and you say like, we need to find the next Alex Lyon. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm not sure that's possible either. But I think a guy like Kahkonen is just, again, like when was put in a better situation down the stretch, played a lot better hockey. So if you're looking for kind of a shorter term type of, I don't know, safety net is the right word, but you know what I mean? Like a shorter term, like you said, I don't even want to say bridge, just like, because I don't think we're going to bring him into like bridge. I don't think the plan is like, let's bridge Kahkonen to Billy or to Billy Husso. Goodness. Sebastian Cossa, rather. I think it's probably just like we need some more goalie depth this season, and that's the guy that kind of jumped out as me.
I really like this poll by you, because people are going to look at his numbers this year and these last couple of years and go, oh, he was not very good. But like, keep in mind who he played with, right? He played with the league's worst San Jose Sharks. They faced the most shot attempts at 5-on-5 of any team in the entire league. And his save percentage this past couple of years suffered. 37 games in 22-23, 8.83. 31 games in this past season with San Jose before the trade, 8.95. But like, if you look at his track record before and after San Jose, when he played on more competitive hockey teams, like not always even like deep playoff teams, right? Minnesota Wild, he started his career with. He played 24 games in 21 and 25 games in 22, had a 902 and a 910 save percentage. His first 11 games with the San Jose Sharks post that trade, he had a 916 save percentage. He looked really good. And then after his trade from San Jose to New Jersey, which again, this past year was not a playoff team, he had a .923 save percentage. So like this is very clearly a talented goalie that just needed a team in front of him so that he could thrive. And that's the case with any goalie. Like you're going to find it hard pressed. Your best goalies in the league aren't going to put up a over 900 save percentage playing with the San Jose Sharks. I don't mean that to take a shot at like JD Sharks, but I mean, they were a tank team and they were a tank team on purpose. So I really like this poll. Now, when it comes to like guys like, or things like term and contract, I'm comfortable. Like this guy has more of a track record than Ville Husso did when they traded and then signed Ville Husso. They gave Ville Husso 3 by 4.75 because he had 40 games of really stellar performance with the St. Louis Blues. That was a very good St. Louis Blues team still. That was very good at sheltering him. You saw that here. So if you're comfortable giving him that type of contract, you know, you have this opportunity with Kahkonen with 2 full seasons with San Jose where his numbers look bad to kind of capitalize on the fact that his counting numbers, because counting numbers do matter when negotiating contracts, to maybe get him on a little bit of a steal, a guy that you might believe is better than his numbers, you know, a relay. So I think that there is a reality where this is a over 900 save percentage goalie, and on a Red Wings team that's a borderline borderline playoff team to begin with, I think that you get him here, that he could look really good.
I've obviously been very vocal. I know we got to get to a break here too, but I've been very vocal about the fact that I really want the Wings to bring in someone else in the goaltender situation. I would be very disappointed if we just walked into the fall with the 2 goalies we have on roster right now and just call it a day. So any sort of extra, whether you want to call it competition or depth, I don't really care. And I do think that Capo is a guy who, again, like given a bigger opportunity, he wouldn't cost you too much money, and proved, in again, albeit a short sample size, that with a decent team in front of him, he can be productive.
Absolutely. We're going to do a quick break. When we return, we're going to come back to you with a couple other goaltender options for the Red Wings between the pipes for next season and beyond. So stay tuned for that in segment 2 of Locked On Red Wings. Going to talk to you guys today about FanDuel. It's winner-take-all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockdown and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty, I'm going to go next. I'm going to bring a name to you that I think would be worth targeting in free agency. And again, it's a guy that we talked about last offseason, and that would be Laurent Brossoit of the Winnipeg Jets. I believe the year prior, he was with the Vegas Golden Knights, had very good numbers with them. I brought him up in the offseason as a guy to possibly bring in as a backup goaltender candidate. With the Vegas Golden Knights last year, he had a .927 save percentage in just 11 starts. And those 11 starts was the reason why he got such a short-term deal, being the 1-year $1.75. It was kind of like a prove-it deal. Well, now he has proven it, because this past year he played 23 games with the Winnipeg Jets, because, again, they're one of those rare occasions where Hellebuck is going to be able to play all those games that you need out of a true number one, which doesn't happen as much anymore. But still, in 23 games played, he again put up a .92 save percentage on the season with just 2 goals against. Now, it is worth noting that this Winnipeg Jets team was pretty strong defensively as well. With any of these goalies that I mentioned today, you have to take into account that they're playing on playoff teams. So their numbers a lot of the times may be inflated by the fact that the team's a little bit better defensively. This Winnipeg Jets team was 19th in Corsi against, shot attempts against, which is good. When it comes to Corsi against, you want to be at the bottom of the list. So them being 19th means that they are one of the worst defensive teams that I might bring up today in our conversations, outside of obviously the San Jose Sharks we led the conversation with. But Laurent Brossoit, again, like on a slightly worse team than the year prior, with the Vegas Golden Knights having won the Stanley Cup the year before, put up just the same amount of amount of rock star numbers in twice as many games. The only problem here, the only hiccup, is that you may have to pay him more because this last year with Winnipeg was kind of a prove-it year for him, and he proved that he can put up good numbers.
Yeah, and that there's a few conversations. I mean, that might kind of be a similar thing. We'll see how much sample size matters with Capo as well. But yeah, I think that's another kind of similar conversation, right? Like guys that had. There's a pool of especially when it comes to goalies specifically. It's very similar to relievers in baseball, where like there's just a pool of them that always get a ton of short-term deals year after year and kind of bounce around. And so when you have a guy like this that got a shorter-term deal but kind of flourished in it, you're trying to set yourself up, like you said, a prove-it deal to get kind of the multi-year, a little bit more job security type of contract going forward. And that's, again, yet another guy that I would not mind. Like, as we talked about in the beginning, full circle type of thing. Like I don't think there's a guy out here that we're going to walk away from this conversation at the end of 30 minutes and be like, yeah, I want to hand over, 4 to 6 years and make him the 1A, right? Like, I just don't think that's out there this year. And that puts you in a position where you either just roll in with what you have, which I would be very against, but I'm sure plenty of people out there are pretty fine with, especially, if we're going to extend Raymond and Sider or whatnot, going to spend a lot of money anyway. Or you get you look at guys like this that you can try at least to project in the future. And I think that, yeah, that's another solid one.
I mean, he's just on back-to-back, again, playoff teams. He's put up solid numbers in that backup role. And if you're hoping that Sebastian Cosa's ready sooner than later, then they might be able to split the workload. And maybe with even more workload, he could look even better. But again, the biggest hiccup there is just that he's only played 23 games this last year. So his numbers, just because of sample size, smaller sample size on a good team, might look better than a guy like Kahkonen, who was handed a lot of workload on a bad team. So there's that's the give and take of those two conversations. And he made 1.175, so maybe you're able to get him on a slightly cheaper deal too, like $3 million. But I don't know. Like, that's the thing, is I don't want to come on here and act like I know what the going rate for goaltenders are, because when it comes to my knowledge on hockey, my weakest trait is goaltending and projecting what they're going to make. So, like, it's so hard to project that with these guys. Scotty, who else do you have as potential fits for the Red Wings between the pipes, assuming that they want to fill that third goaltender option after James Reimer walks away on July 1st?
Yeah. Do you want to talk Samsonov?
I mean, he's an interesting conversation, that's for sure. He's a
right.
unique
I also
situation.
think that Matt Murray is an interesting conversation as well. Those were kind of the two more that I had circled, just in terms of, again, not necessarily like we need to go get these guys, but just bring up it as parts of this conversation. I mean, Matt Murray hasn't played hockey in over a year and is coming off of a pretty decently sized contract and is going to be a UFA. I don't think he played a single game this season. He ended the season in the AHL. He played a couple of games finally toward the end of the year, and they said maybe postseason, and that never happened. So I think that's a guy. And even like the couple of years before that, like, he wasn't putting up incredible numbers. So, yeah, that would kind of be like if we have other people higher on our list, right? If Yzerman has a list of goalies that he's going to target, and a lot of the ones at the top go off the board, maybe you can get on a really cheap contract, take a chance, and he would get kind of the 1 year prove it deal, right? That we've talked about with some other guys already. That's going to be probably what he gets this year. I can't imagine anyone's going to fork over, a multi-year kind of long-term commitment to Matt Murray.
Yeah, it's one of those situations with him and Samsonov where it's like, I don't see, and for the record, Samsonov had played 40 games with the Toronto Maple Leafs this year, had 890 the year before. He played 42 and had 919. So a down year for Samsonov for sure, which is going to lower any value of any possible contract he gets on the free agent market. He made 3.5 this year with the Toronto Maple Leafs. I struggle to see them sign any goaltender as a third goalie to just a 1 year prove it deal. like if you're going to sign any goaltender, it's got to be a goaltender that you think is going to be here past Husso and Lyon. And I just don't have. And
There'll
while
be a lot of
Samsonov,
goalies coming off the books at once, eh?
right. And while Samsonov definitely had a better second half of the season than he did the first half, I think the first 20 games he played, he had like an 870 save percentage.
Yeah.
And the last 20 he played was like an 899, so just a hair below 900. And he played fairly well in the playoffs as well. He had three lockdown games and then 2 where he got kind of exposed. So he's a very, very streaky, and that's what worries me. I would want to stay away from him. And Matt Murray, just with all the injury issues that he's had and the inconsistency he had prior to the injury issues, I'd want to stay away from that too. I'd rather just ride, but instead of giving those guys 1-year prove-it deals, I'd rather just ride with Husso and Lyon, because when it comes to me and fixing and addressing the goaltender situation, I wouldn't want to bring in more guys that are just more question marks. I'd rather bring in a goaltender that at least I have some confidence is going to be a goalie in that for the Detroit Red Wings. And that's a pretty low bar, but I just don't know if Samsonov and Matt Murray can do that, especially because, like, you stay away from Leafs goalies in general, man. Like, that just seems to be, like, where goalies go to die. I don't know, but...
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. And like I said, I just wanted to bring it up because they are bigger names, and
they'd be cheap options.
Would probably be cheaper choices. But I feel like I'm kind of in your camp there. I feel like I probably lean on that side of the aisle. I especially with man, I don't know, especially with both of them. I tend to agree though. I think there is a conversation for, like, if the offseason's winding down and you haven't done anything, and maybe like Murray's still out there, maybe you can lob him a 1 year. But I actually think the best point you made on there was your first point, which is just like, if they sign a goalie to a 1-year deal this year, they're going to have 3 goalies coming off the books at essentially the exact same time. And that's probably not the best recipe for sustainability and consistency between the pipes either.
All right. We're going to take another quick break. When we return, we'll finish up this conversation. And as I have a few bigger names that I want to get to in segment 3. And when I say bigger, I mean bigger comparable to other names we were talking about on this list. So stay tuned for that in segment 3 of Locked On Red Wings. Got to talk to you guys today about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships also is what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty, the next name I want to talk about, just to dive right into it, I think Anthony Stolarz of the Florida Panthers is going to be an interesting conversation. There's that word again, interesting. We can't get away from it. The Florida Panthers are I don't see them bringing back Stolarz, mainly because of the fact that they have 2 goalies under contract for the next 2 years, being Sergei Bobrovsky and Spencer Knight. Bobrovsky makes $10 million. Knight makes $4.5 million. They have over half of their forward core either being UFAs or in need of a new contract, as well as 4 defensemen being UFAs or in need of a new contract. While they have a projected cap space of $19 million, nearly $20 million, they have too many bodies to fill to spend on another goaltender. And Anthony Stolarz this season was really good. This past year, he made just $1.1 million, but in 27 games played for the Florida Panthers, he had a save percentage of .925. He had an .899 last year with a very bad Anaheim Ducks team, and .917 the year prior with that same Anaheim Ducks team. So this is a goalie that has a little bit of a track record of being consistent in that, albeit with, again, limited playing time. Now this year, he's playing on a very, very, very stingy Florida Panthers team defensively. I believe the Florida Panthers Corsi against was second best in the league. Yeah, it's 31st in the league for shot attempts against, which again is a good thing in this situation. So you have to take that with a heavy grain of salt. But Stolarz put up good numbers with a good Florida Panthers team. And while that might come down a little bit, I wouldn't expect them to put up 927 playing, you would hope, 30 games with the Detroit Red Wings this next season. If he does sign, I would at least hope it'd be like in the realm of 905 to 910, which is just as good, if not better, than what we actually got out of our goaltenders this season. That alone would be an improvement. And if the defense gets it better, and on top of that, maybe even better as well.
Are we going to start a Florida to Detroit goalie pipeline?
That's a good point. Alex Lyon the year before, right?
Every year, we're just going to take the goalie they don't want. Every year, the Panthers goalie they don't re-sign, the Detroit Red Wings will take. I don't hate it. And again, like when we're looking at I don't want to call it the cheaper options per se, because he's going to get a raise from what he was making last year, which was 1.5 mil. But I think that there are, again, when you're talking about players that you are comfortable giving multi-year deals so that you're not having, 3 goalies on 1-year deals this upcoming season. I think that's probably another solid one. And certainly there's a little bit more security in there than there is in, again, some of the guys we talked about before the break, like Murray, et cetera.
Right, and I'd be comfortable giving him a 2-3 year deal and like doubling his pay raise, because that you're still not killing the cap at that cap hit, but you're having a goaltender who you think might be a little bit of a solution for you for the next few years going forward. And I don't mean solution as in like he's the guy, but like can take some of the workload off your other goaltenders, being Husso, Lyon, and then hopefully going forward, Sebastian Cossa. Another goaltender that I think is of note, 36-year-old Cam Talbot. He played again, a really good LA Kings team, and I think LA might make an effort to try and retain him here. I haven't heard anything out of the LA camp, but they just have David Riddick on a $1 million deal, and Phoenix Copley is on the IR, and he's a UFA as well. So like they have to address their goaltending situation unless they think guys like Connor or Jacob Ingram or Eric Portillo down there in the minors are going to be their guy. Who are both very young, but those guys are in need of new contracts too. So they may try and retain Cam Talbot, but if they don't, I don't hate that option, right? Like he's kind of the perfect guy in terms of, again, bridging the gap a little bit. You don't have to give him, because he's 36, you don't have to give him a 6-7 year contract. That's infeasible, right? But you could give him 2 or 3 years, maybe 4. I'm speculating again. I don't know. I don't have a good feel for goaltending. And he had up really good numbers with the LA Kings this year. He had a .917 save percentage. So I just think that this guy in Cam Talbot could potentially, he played 54 games too. Like it's not a light workload.
Yeah.
He was the guy. So the only issue with Cam Talbot is you might be getting him on a shorter term, but you'd have to pay him more money. It's closer to what Ville Husso gets paid, maybe like the $4.755 million. This past year with the LA Kings, oh man, they got him on a steal. AAV of $2 million. That's insane. Cap hit only $1 million. Jeez. I see. That's exactly what I mean, though. Like I have no idea what he could be getting paid. With the Minnesota Wild, before that, he was getting paid cap hit of $3.6 million, and before that, $2.75. So it's like it's really hard to project what they might want to pay him, but he's proven.
Goalie market is also just weird in general every year. Yeah.
Go back the last 5 seasons with Cam Talbot. Outside of the season with Ottawa, we had an 8.98. It was a 9.11 with Minnesota, 9.15 with Minnesota, 9.19 with Calgary. So he's got a track record of more success than not. And that Ottawa team was the only one in there that wasn't a playoff team. So yeah, maybe his numbers were a little bit inflated. But like at 36, you might have to pay him a little bit more coming off this 1-year deal and having a good season and 56 games played, but you're not going to be getting him for 5, 6, 7 years. You don't have to worry about necessarily term as much.
Yeah, for sure. And again, like you don't need to go into this and be like, we need to find, again, like a 4-year guy. If you get somebody on a 2-year deal, that's fine, right? Yeah. Like it's just you're going to put yourself between a rock and a hard place with a 1 year, and you also don't obviously want to overcommit to somebody just to bring in another goalie. So like if you find a 2-year guy, that's more than fun. We can just have this conversation again next summer and be like, okay, who are we going to bring in now? It feels like an annual episode, just like, kind of gauging the goalie market. And so we'll do it again. But I really do think your point about, finding guys more than just 1-year deals is probably something they have in the back of their mind as well.
Yeah, just I would like max out a goalie. I don't want to give a contract length to like 4 years, but then, that's what we want and what do the goalies on the market want. And again, I reiterate, like when it comes to talking goaltender contracts, I'm lost. Like this is no man's land for me. I'm not entirely sure. So I'm just giving it my best guesstimate. One last goalie for you, Scotty. You're going to love this one. Alex Nedeljkovic of the Pittsburgh Penguins. Now, when we talk about goaltender, right, he played this last year with Pittsburgh. He played 38 games, had a .902 save percentage, which was about league average, and this Pittsburgh Penguins team was not good. So this is a Pittsburgh Penguins team that had the 11th most, nearly top 10, shot attempts against of any team this past year, and he had a .902 save percentage. Granted, the Red Wings are at number 8, and we've seen that one before, but I just wanted to bring it up because he had a nice little bounce back year. He's on a cheap contract. So for an option of like 2-3 years as like an extra guy, maybe, no, probably not. But I thought it was interesting.
It is interesting. All of these have been interesting according to us. I'm going to go no. I root for Ned. Like I hope that he continues to have this kind of bounce back career resurgence after his rough year with us. But I don't know. I can't see that happening. I can't see them letting go from him last year. And then he has one good year somewhere that's not Detroit and they give him a multi-year deal. That seems
all right.
That seems pretty far-fetched, but
well, I mean, he came off a multi-year deal with the Detroit Red Wings, but that's
my point. Even more so, even.
I mostly bring up Nedeljkovic in jest, and I want to make sure that is known to people. But he did have a nice bounce back year, and he
had a good year with Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and the bottom line too is like I'm reading off all these goalie statistics, right? All these guys with 920, 915 save percentages, but they're all playing on playoff teams that are much better defensively than the Detroit Red Wings. And we've seen time and time again that goalies that the Red Wings bring in that had good years with better teams come here and then play poorly because the Red Wings are not a good defensive team. I had it there at the end. The Red Wings had the 8th most shot attempts against at 5-on-5 of any team in the NHL. Yeah. And like the fact of the matter is, until this team gets better defensively, our goaltending is going to continue to suffer because of that. Because no matter how good your goaltender is, like Vezina candidate or AHL tier, they're going to be affected by the team in front of them. Like look at the New York Rangers, right? Igor Shesterkin was amazing in the Eastern Conference Finals, but the team consistently got outplayed by the Florida Panthers in every single game, and what happened? They lost the series. Yeah. So, like, until the Red Wings are a better team in front of their goaltender, the goaltenders are going to continue to look worse than they do on a better team. So it's a chicken and the egg problem.
Agreed.
Anyways, let us know what you guys think. Who on this list interests you the most, or who not on the list interests you the most? And I'm sure at some point we'll talk Linus Ullmark and that potential trade situation, as the Boston Bruins got to pay Jeremy Swayman. So stay tuned for that on a later episode of Locked On Red Wings. Scotty, any final thoughts?
I don't think so, man. We ball.
We do ball. We'll be back with a new episode tomorrow. Same time, same place. It's your team every day.
Every day.